Hey, everybody, it's time for the safest players on the current board. These are the players that you can count on to get you a small win in your fantasy drafts, because sometimes piling up small wins is the best way to pile up one big win, your league championship at the end of the season. I'm Dan Vespers, and this is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball presented by FanDuel Sports and the FanDuel Sportsbook. They are the presenting sponsor of our program and a partner of all shows on the Believe network of podcasts. Find me on Twitter at Dan Vespers, and please, please, please hit that subscribe button as we're settling in. I'll ask you again later. Maybe you need to wait, decide if you actually like the kind of crap we're doing around here. Then you can subscribe. Hit the like button. That doesn't hurt you. Although if you're, maybe you don't want me to see me in your algorithm anymore, I'll ask you to do that again later on. Let's start the slideshow. Here's the safest winners to draft in fantasy basketball. What the hell am I talking about? These 11 players inside the top 100, because a lot of guys outside the top 100 are going to be winners. It's very easy to be a winner outside the top 100, but we're looking for something else when you talk about a player that far down the board. These are guys inside the top 100, so being drafted in, 96% or more of fantasy leagues. They have small risks, pretty small, generally small enough where you can kind of toss them out, but not all the way. But they're almost guaranteed winners in some capacity. We'll talk through each one of them as we go. So does it make sense to go ultra safe? We're going to be using Yahoo's rank board number 2. That was the one that dropped about a week and a half ago, something along those lines. And we'll use that until they update it. Start at the top. This one is probably the hardest one, and it's James Harden at 14, because last year he was going in the 20s. He even finished up like around number 18, and he still, in my opinion, was a nice, safe winner. And he finished, by the way, around number 14. So it's weird for me to say, hey, this is a safe win, when I think he's going to finish basically right at his per-game marker. But I really liked what we saw from Harden last year. I loved the fact that he played 79 ball games. I loved the fact that his field goal percent kind of came around as the season went on. And depending on what you think Harden does this year, almost exclusively in one category, that category being field goal percent, it sort of swings whether you think he's going to be, not the right way to present this, a 9-category winner on both per game and totals, or just on totals. In his career, James Harden is a 44%er from the field. So there is still that floating around. It's not like the number of three-pointers he's taking is changing dramatically. Earlier in his career, it was more like around half, although there were stretches where it was more than that. And that's what it is right now. It's been more than half. But that's not the big factor here. It was just that he didn't have a great shooting year. He's slowing down a bit. But then the second half of last season, he shot 46, 47%. So we've seen him do it for a sustained stretch. The problem was that he shot about 38% before that. So not to say that it will go up, but if he shot 42% for the year last season instead of 41, then he beats this number 14 slot. If he shoots 43% or 44, he would have been a first rounder. And if you happen to be playing 8-cat, that makes this decision much, much easier. James Harden was number 6 in 8-category leagues last year, those 4.3 turnovers being the obvious 9-category anchor holding him down. And then you don't even need a field goal percent flex. So Roto, maybe less exciting than head-to-head, at least in terms of like, is he the true safe win I'm claiming him to be? But head-to-head side, it's damn near a lock. Steph Curry at 27. He's not going that late because most of the drafts right now are, I don't want to say expert drafts, but the people that are drafting more than a month in advance of the season are typically the people that pay much closer attention to fantasy basketball. All of you guys watching fantasy basketball podcasts, listening to fantasy basketball podcasts, you are the upper tiers of fantasy basketball players. So you guys are out there taking Steph Curry at 16 and 17, but his rank on Yahoo is 27. And as you get closer to the season and you start to see more of those public drafts creep in, the public prize leagues, the free public leagues, more mocks, etc., it's going to be people that are like rubbing the sleep out of their eyes and going, oh, let's see what the Yahoo board looks like this year. And then just drafting pretty much off of that. And you'll see Steph's ADP, I feel pretty confident, unless Yahoo moves him up the board a bunch, which they could still. But if they leave him in this range, you'll see his ADP slide. And I don't think anybody's arguing with me on this one. Steph is both one of the safest plays on the board, and you could almost call him like sleeper territory at 27, but there isn't a great word for it because he's not a breakout player because he's what, like 37 years old or something like that. There's no breakout. There's no sleeper. Everybody knows who Steph Curry is, but he's just way too late at 27. So screw it. We'll call him one of the safest because I think Steph has top 10 potential this year if the steals stay decent, which maybe they don't, but I don't know. That's pretty stinking good. You got a first rounder in the third. And if he plays in 70 ball games, he smokes that 27 by totals also. Last year he played in 70 games, and that actually made him better in totals than head-to-head because the guys around him on the board, as it turned out, mostly missed a bunch of ball games, like Dame, Luka, Maxey. Those guys were all right around Steph in per-game ranks last year, and Steph played more games than all of them. Next name on the board, by the way, Steph Curry expected final rank top 15. Next name on the board is Kevin Durant at 31, who's a similar story to Steph in that this is an absurdly late spot for KD, but you could at least make the argument that Kevin Durant has missed ball games. Steph has been, I don't want to say like super healthy, but in the years where the Warriors have that internal fire, there's a belief. You can always tell whether the Warriors believe they're going to win based on how many games Steph Curry plays in a given season. I don't want to go back to Steph too much here, but like if you look at his most recent years, he played 70 this season. He played 74 the year before that. The year prior to that, honestly, even 2 years, you could see the Warriors didn't really believe they were going to compete, and he played 56 ball games. 64 the season before that one, coming out of COVID, 63. COVID year, Steph basically missed the entire season. I mean, there was like a 2 or 3 year stretch there where the Warriors were stagnant. I thought Jimmy Butler was the one who kind of woke him up this season. So, I mean, he's still there. Anyway, on the Kevin Durant front, at least now when you're like, oh, well, why is he in this range? It's because he hasn't stayed healthy. Where you're with Steph, it's like, I don't understand this one at all. Both of these guys, Steph and Kevin Durant, are older. Both of them profile, in my opinion, as top 10 per game producers. But when you look at KD, he's been healthy like 1 out of the last 5 or 6 seasons. He missed all of 2019, 2020. He missed half of the 2020 COVID year. He missed 17 games of the shortened season. He missed about 35 games of the year after that. And then all of a sudden he played 75 in Phoenix. And then this year dropped back down to 62 again. So unfortunately, and as much as I'd love to tell you that KD is my favorite player on the board at number 31, and he's damn close to that, I cannot guarantee that he's going to clear 65 games. I can't. The beauty, however, of Kevin Durant is last year he played 62 games, and he was still number 25 by totals. That's how unbelievably powerful it is to be a first rounder on a per game basis. You don't even have to get near your games played target if you're being drafted 2 rounds later. Give me 60 games out of Kevin Durant this year, and he's going to beat 30-something by totals. If KD plays 65 or 66 games this season, he might still be a late first rounder because I think he's going to be top 8 this season. I put top 10 here to give myself a 2-slot buffer, but I think Kevin Durant is number 8 when I actually do my ranks later on, and I'm not going to do them all by integers, but I think KD's number 8 this season. Hey, if you're checking out the season win totals of the Houston Rockets, check them out on FanDuel Sports. They're at 55.5. Ooh, that's a big one. I love the Rockets this year. I think they're gonna dunk, but I have no idea if it's gonna be all in the playoffs or if they're gonna try to run it up in the regular season. So I would probably look at the under, even though I think they're gonna be good. I just think there's gonna be a bit of a learning curve with this team that's not really budgeted in on that number at 55.5. So slightly into the under on the regular season. And at the same time, I actually really like them for playoff related futures. I think that's a team that's gonna be good by like January. And then they try to roll that with some health into April. And that's when they start to do their damage for real. But anyway, that's over at FanDuel Sports, our partner here. Jamal Murray at number 41. This was the one that almost didn't quite make the cut, which is weird because he was awesome last year. And after missing a few games early in the season while kind of coming back from whatever the hell nebulous leg stuff that he was dealing with during the Olympics over the summer that made us all go, what's happened to Jamal Murray? He's slow and he's a little bit chunky. And then he wasn't by like late November. He was a beast. Finished at number 18 by totals this past year. 21, 4, and 6. Great percentages, relatively low turnovers, high steals. Even got you half a block from a point guard eligible player. He was awesome. And I don't see any real reason why he shouldn't be awesome again. The Nuggets didn't trade for someone who was high usage. They got rid of Michael Porter Jr., who I actually think is probably a slightly higher usage guy than Cam Johnson, who they brought in. And they brought in a backup to Jokic and Bruce Brown, who's going to be more, I guess, distributy among that second unit. Does that take something away from Murray? Maybe the minutes, 36 was a bit on the high side. Those could come down still. I got Jamal finishing inside the top 30 this year pretty reliably, and he comes into the season healthy. And so, the big question on Jamal Murray is a little bit similar to the question on Steph and Kevin Durant, which is, can he make it through a season? But he got a nice offseason. I mean, the Nuggets had an okay playoff run, but he's finally now had an opportunity to kind of come into a year more healthy. This was his healthiest season in quite some time, I would argue, since before COVID. And I'm hoping that because Jamal's not an old dude, he's born in 97, guys. Dude is 28. He's not old. He's in his prime. There is an opportunity here for Jamal to actually be kind of coming out of an injury-prone stretch that happened early in his career. I honestly think that those bubble runs, like, that was a multi-year toll on a lot of guys. Anthony Davis had multiple years where he just wasn't right after the bubble. The Heat, like half of the Miami Heat weren't right after the bubble. LeBron has never quite been the same in his foot since the bubble. I know he was old. He's 41, so it's a little different on LeBron, but like that COVID stuff, man, it really wrecked a lot of dudes. And I know Jamal's had other things going on, but if you look back at his first few seasons in the league, he played almost every game for his first 3 years. Missed like 7 total games over 3 years. And then the COVID season / bubble that started a 4-year run of injury stuff. 4.5 if you consider the Olympics and the offseason stuff. But he was great once he got his legs underneath him this past year. And I think he has a shot to be great again. But what I don't know is if he can make it to 70 games. I'm hopeful. And the beauty of Jamal Murray is going at 41 is that he was number 27 by totals last year, missing 15 ball games. So there is, again, wiggle room taking him at 41. He was more than a round better than that by totals last year, despite coming into the season visibly not at full strength, needing to basically training camp his way through the first 2 to 3 weeks of the year. And I think they'll try to go easy on him where they can. He's not going to play in 75 games, but I don't think it's completely out of the question to say that he has a shot at 70. And if he plays in 70 games, he smashes this pre-rank of 41. If he plays in 65, I think he beats it. Derrick White at 46 is our next one on the board. And I had him on the breakout board also, I think. I don't know. I got to go back and look to see if he made that one. But he's another guy to me that could destroy ADP. Derrick White last year beat his ADP for a number of different reasons. He's number 34 on a per game basis. That to me is almost a no-brainer to go up. Unless he falls off a cliff in percentages, the added usage of being on a Celtics team that is without Jason Tatum, Porzingis, and Drew Holiday and added only Anthony Simons means extra stuff. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole again because we've done it about 4 times on this podcast over the last month anyway. You guys get that. No one argues with the idea of Derrick White getting more stuff to do. Most of the arguments around Derrick White are centered on whether or not the Celtics actually play him for an entire season. And guess what? At this price, I don't care. Because I think Derrick White is going to be a second rounder per game this year. So just like we talked about with Jamal Murray, I only need him to get to about 63, 64 games to beat this mark by totals. And you're like, Dan, I don't want to draft a guy who's going to play in 64 games. Honest to goodness, I don't blame you. What I'm trying to say isn't that he's going to play in 64 games. I'm just telling you that's all you need. If he gets to 68, he beats a pre-rank of 46 by probably a round, maybe a round and a half. If he gets to 70, he probably beats it by 2 rounds. If he gets anywhere near where he was last year, which was 76, I don't think that's going to happen, but I call it a 10, 15% chance it does. He's a first rounder if he plays in 76 games this year. That's a guy you're definitely taking in the 4th, an extremely safe one because, as I just mentioned, he could miss a quarter of the season and still beat this rank. But that's kind of the thing. There's different reasons why different guys are in this safest players board. I think Derrick White and Kevin Durant and Steph Curry and even Jamal Murray to a certain degree, they have so much per game loft that we don't need them to play more than 60-ish games. And anything beyond that, the games played targets are the upside. 62 games is break even. 64 is a win. 66 is a medium win. 70 is a bigger win. Next safe play, Myles Turner at 73. I have his expected final rank inside the top 55. He's another one where if you're drafting now, he's not falling much past about 55 or 60 in drafts, and that's where he should be going. He's in a new place, Milwaukee, where I'm assuming they're going to put a little more on him than the Pacers did. He only played 30 minutes a game for Indiana last year, and Indy never really overloaded him with minutes per game. I think there's a shot that given how kind of flimsy the Bucks are this year behind Giannis and Myles Turner, like there's, Kyle Kuzma, is that really the next guy? I do think, by the way, I actually like Bobby Portis this year. I've talked about that before, but not because of anything related to Giannis and Myles Turner, because there's just usage there. So I think there's a shot that Myles gets to do more just by existing more. Give him 31 minutes instead of 30, 31 and a half. I think Myles Turner has a shot this year at being inside the top 40, but I feel like he would have to be so unbelievably bad to not beat number 73 that and as long as Giannis is there, the Bucks are not going to tank. So it all just comes down to, can Myles Turner play 70 ball games? And I think the answer is, yeah, he played 72 last year, so there's no reason to think he can't get back around that mark again this season. He's been a little banged up during his career, but nothing overly substantial where you're like, yeah, this guy's always out for 25 games. That hasn't been the case. He always misses a handful, 2 handfuls, but it's usually not atrocious. He's better in 9-cat than 8-cat because his turnovers are on the lower side, and he's pretty good across the board as a big man who doesn't help you a ton in field goal percent, but isn't awful there, and kind of a little bit in that JJJ mold, but without the scoring. And so if you're not as concerned about the points, you can get Myles Turner 3 rounds later than Jaren Jackson. Although, honestly, I kind of like them both. And I didn't put JJJ on my safest plays this year, but he frankly could have been on this list. So Myles at 73, I don't think I need to say a whole lot more there. Go do it. OG Anunoby was the next one that almost didn't make the list. He and Jamal Murray were the two that I was like, can I find a way to get them in there? And so I threw OG in, even though I'm a little bit worried about the Knicks as a team taking a fantasy step back, even if the team overall takes a reality baby step forward. And it's obvious why, because we just did a Knicks breakdown, whatever it was, a week ago, because everybody played a billion minutes. Tibbs was Tibbsin. He was Tibbin last year. OG played almost 37 minutes a game. Somehow managed to survive 74 ball games last season. Hart played almost 38. Bridges was at 37. These are numbers that just have to come down. They have to. Not because the guys can't handle it. We just saw them handle it for this year. But guys can't handle it for multiple seasons in a row. And we've seen that because Tibbs breaks dudes. They just fall apart. OG Anunoby played 36 minutes a game in Toronto, 2021, 2022, and he lasted 48 games that year. This past season was the most minutes per game he's ever played and the most total minutes he's ever played by a lot. He played 2,700 minutes this year. Previous high was a little under 2,400. So he played an extra few hours of basketball. That's a lot of wear and tear. So I'm a little bit worried about the wear and the tear. But I think the reason I'm less worried about that is that Mike Brown's going to probably play him 34 minutes instead of 36. So some of the stuff is going to come down for OG. It's okay because he's shown the ability to get steals and blocks even when the minutes are 34, 34 and a half, 35 instead of 36 and a half. That number, playing more minutes this year didn't actually change his steals and blocks all that much. What it did change was his scoring. OG got more shots off this year. Rebounds were basically the same as they had been throughout his career. Assists were basically the same. Turnovers were basically the same. So the minutes didn't change OG much other than it looked like maybe it bought him about an extra shot. Okay, he was number 37 this year. What if you remove a shot from OG and leave most of the other stuff about the same? He's still top 50. And let's give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room and say he probably finishes inside the top 60. Not a massive win at 75. And the injury stuff does scare me a little bit. That's why he almost didn't make this board. But I think at 75, he's still an okay price to pay. That's the beginning of the 7th round. There are some kind of like medium swing type guys in the 7th round. But most of them, in my opinion, don't have the upside to warrant the swing. They have more than OG, but their downside is way bigger than Anunoby. And so I'd rather go OG in this round or the next name we're going to talk about, who I plan on putting out a short on later on today on YouTube and on social media, and that's Rudy Gobert at 78, who I'll admit, there have been years where I wanted nothing to do with Rudy. When he was getting drafted in the top 30 range, I didn't want anything to do with Rudy Gobert because you're spending a 3rd-round pick on basically a punt free throw guy. But he just keeps falling year after year after year. And you can understand some of it. This season, what did I just say? He's at 78? Yeah, he's at 78 this season. If I go back, thankfully, now that I have this running G sheet, he was pre-ranked 52 last season, and I wasn't super excited about it. It was one of those spots where you're like, yeah, all right. Like, I'd rather have Jared Allen there because then you don't have to deal with the free throw thing and so on and so forth. And Rudy ended up with, by most measurements, a bad season this last year. And he was still ranked right around top 60 in a bad year. Right? Can we all agree that, like, if you just sort of glance at the Rudy Gobert year, you'd say, oh, that wasn't very good. He was under his career mark in scoring, only 12 points per game. That's the lowest marks for him in 10 years. His blocks were at 1.4. That ties the lowest mark of any season in his career outside of his rookie year where he played 9 minutes a game. He's had multiple seasons where he's played far fewer minutes and blocked far more shots. Steals stayed the same. Assists stayed the same. Rebounds were down. He had his lowest second, lowest rebounding year since he's been a full-time starter in his career. And the only thing that was good for Sir Rudy last year was he was about 3 percentage points above his career mark in free throw, but nothing outlandish. It wasn't his best free throw shooting year. I think it was his third best. So everything about Rudy last season screamed, And yet, he was still ranked higher than this pre-rank in 9-cat. Basically on any site you look at. Now, 8-cat, I get it. He's a 1.2 to 1.6 turnover a game guy. So in 8 category leagues, he is lower. I think he was number 76 in 8 category leagues. But guess what? That's where he's being drafted right now. 76 is the same as 78. Those are the same. I know they're 2 numbers off in real counting, but in fantasy, they're the same. And I say again, this was about as bad as his year could have gone, but it wasn't because something substantial changed. He still played 33 minutes a game. He was still right on basically what he's always done. His shots were down a little bit. I'm not super worried about that. I don't really care if he scores 12 points a game or 13 points a game. It matters not to me. He was healthy. Only missed 10 ball games, 6 the year before that, 12 the year before that, 16 the year before that, but 1, 4, 0 the 3 years before that. There was a weird stretch early in Gobert's career, right when we started doing fantasy podcasting over here, whatever show you happen to listen to of mine, where Rudy alternated healthy and unhealthy years, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And then he just stayed healthy for like 5 of the next 6 seasons. So I'm not worried about that. I know he's been in the NBA for a while. He's not a spring chicken anymore. He's 33, so he's on the wrong side of his prime, but that's not a thing. I don't think the lower blocks is a result of just getting old. I think it's just a stat that fluctuates sometimes. He had 1.4 blocks per game 2 seasons back in Minnesota also, but he had 2.1 the year in between. And the minutes didn't change. Are the rebounds down this past year because of the personnel around him? Maybe. Maybe not. I think Rudy, and the reason I talk so much about him is that, again, he wasn't a guy that I thought I was going to have any interest in this season because I thought he'd be pre-ranked in the 50s again. And I'm like, but here he is, almost at 80. And a guy that, in basically a worst-case scenario, was number 80 in 8-cat. And a round and a half better than that in 9. So I like Rudy a lot this year. I think he's an unbelievably safe pick. I can't believe that, I'm pushing Rudy on you guys, but he's a center that I've been able to get in the late 6th, early 7th round in every mock I've done if I've wanted to. And a lot of times I end up taking guards and wings in my first 4 or 5 picks, not on purpose. I'm like, well, crap, I better get a center. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, well, I guess I can take Rudy. And then 2 rounds later, I'll take a shot on, Donovan Clingan or Zach Edey. And I actually feel like that's a pretty good pair of centers, even if you're not getting one of the tippy-top guys. Speaking of centers, Jakob Poeltl at 86 is a pretty safe call, in my opinion. I don't think he's going to be as good as last year. Jakob was number 51 in 8-cat last season. He was better than that in 9 at 43. But I don't think he's going to get 10 shots a game with Barnes, Ingram, Quickly, and RJ Barrett all set to start the year healthy. Poeltl had, by all accounts, his most involved offensive season ever last season. And it's because Barnes missed 17 games and Barrett missed 24 games, and Quickly missed 50, and Grady Dick missed 30, and literally anybody on the team that was willing to take a shot missed like a quarter to 60% of the season. Poeltl was like, yes, power up, Jakob. Poeltl power. That's not going to stick. But I think the minutes will. So the rebounds, the assists, the steals, the blocks, the field goal percent and free throw percent, all those things should carry over with a downtick in usage. So drop him by a round or 2 if the field goal attempt drops from 10 to 8.5 or something like that. But I still think he could be a top 55, top 60 guy. And I gave myself some wiggle room on today's show, and I put top 65. I think top 65 is damn near a shoo-in on Poeltl, and I think he's very safe in this range. He's also a guy going a little earlier than his pre-rank, not as significantly as someone like a Myles Turner, who's pre-ranked 73, but going in the 50s. Poeltl's 86, and I've generally seen him go in the 70s, so like maybe about a round earlier than his rank. But again, we just talked about it with Rudy Gobert. You want to get Rudy in the 6th, Jakob in the 7th. I'm totally fine with that. That's actually a very reasonable pair of centers to build your team around. You better have a bunch of free throw shooters ahead of them, but you probably did if you're taking back-to-back centers in the 6th and 7th rounds anyway. I don't have much more to say on Jakob. And the last name to squeeze onto our board is the most boring player in all of fantasy basketball, and that is Mikal Bridges, who is exactly at number 100 on the pre-rank board. That is right where he's being drafted, and he is the snooze to end all snoozes. He was number 84 in 9 category leagues last year. I would expect him to pretty much do the same damn thing. I know with all the Knicks, I talk about how their minutes are probably going to go down. Bridges is the one guy on earth where I'm not really worried about his minutes changing. I don't think it's going to change what he does. On top of everything else, I still have this outside, probably idiotic hope that Mikal Bridges can maybe get some defensive stat. Not a lot. I'm not asking for a life-changing number of steals, but man, I'd love it if he was at 1.1 instead of 0.9. It's such a small thing to ask, but so very reachable. I wouldn't mind if his free throw percent went back up into the 84, 85 range instead of 81. But everything else, just leave it. 3 to 4 rebounds, 3 to 4 assists. Please give me 1.1 steals. And then all of a sudden, you've got a guy. What was he last year? I said 84. You could get him inside the top 80 per game if the steals were back just a little bitty bit more. But luckily, even if that doesn't happen, he is the ultimate in 9th round. I need someone to not give me zeros plays in fantasy basketball. By totals last year, Mikal Bridges was number 42, and that's where the guaranteed win comes in. I can never fully guarantee anything because that's a good way to guarantee that it's not going to be a guarantee. But there has been no one in the NBA that's come even remotely close to the durability of Mikal Bridges over the last decade. He is in an echelon all his own. And in fantasy basketball, that does matter. It does. Because let's say you took a risk in the 4th and another risk in the 7th, and maybe they were injury-related risk, or maybe they were production-related risks, or whatever it was. But through your first 8 picks, you're not going to go safe on all of them. You're going to take a swing somewhere. You're going to go Kawhi in the early 4th, or you're going to take Avdia in the 5th and hope that that lands or whatever. And so you might get to the 9th round and think, well, bleep me. I've taken some chances here. And the unfortunate thing is that there are other guys right around Bridges that I like a lot more. Wait till we do a sleeper show because they're pretty much all going to be on it. The likes of Donovan Clingan and Tumani Kamara and Asar Thompson and Brandon Pajemski and all these guys that are like 4 slots, anywhere from 1 to 9 slots behind Mikal Bridges on the board. And so in those, you probably take them in the 9th round to make sure that you don't miss out on them. But if you have a very risky team, Mikal Bridges is the guy to... He's like a super glue. You got all these cuts on your team, and you can put Mikal Bridges on them and seal them up. You're like, all right, well, got this dude who's going to play 80 games. Almost for sure. Can never know. Can never know exactly. And he's gonna be boring as hell, and he's barely going to move the needle on a night-to-night basis. But at the end of 20 weeks of regular season fantasy basketball, you're like, oh, thank God I had this guy who, when he had a 4-game week, I got 65 points and 8 threes and 12 rebounds and 16 assists and 4 steals and a couple of blocks on good percentages. Thank goodness I could count on that. Will I end up with Mikal Bridges on any of my own fantasy teams? Probably not. But it's not because I don't think he's a safe pick here. It's because of what I just talked about a second ago, which is that if I have a pick around pick 100 and Donovan Clingan's still on the board, I'm taking Donovan Clingan. And if he's gone, but Tumani Kamara's on the board, I'm taking Kamara. And if he's gone and Asar Thompson's on the board, I'm taking Asar Thompson, and so on and so forth. So Klingon, Kamara, Thompson, Pajemski, those guys pretty much all have to be gone before I go, all right, fine, I'll go safe with Mikal. But hey, maybe they're gone. I'm going to do a lot of drafts. There'll probably be one where I don't get to pick one of my favorite just outside the top 100 sleepers. I'd love it. I'd love to get 2 of them. Oh, I'd love to get 2 of those guys. Just thinking about it gets me all hot and bothered. Speaking of bothered, I'm bothered if you guys don't subscribe to the show. I really hope that if you guys made it this far, you liked what you saw. I hope we brought you some sort of plan when it comes to easy winners across the fantasy landscape. And I hope that will drive you to hit the like and the subscribe button here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Find me on Twitter at Dan Besbris. Again, we're going to try to do more shorts. I've been posting more on Twitter already. There was some Tyler Hero news earlier this morning, but we'll do something else. We'll mostly talk about that on social. No reason to do an entire show. All to say, Norman Powell suddenly interesting. Anywho, I'm Dan. Safest plays in fantasy basketball is brought to you by the Believe Network and FanDuel Sports. We'll see you guys soon, everybody. So long for now.